on Help for Dementia. This is a chance for your questions and some conversation. So just give you a second to get your setup all the way you want to have it. Good to see some familiar names. All right. Well, as we begin, as is our tradition with the Society, I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of the land that we're on today. So we'll take a moment to have a land acknowledgement as we get started. Though we meet virtually tonight, it's essential to recognize the lands that we call home. This reaffirms our commitment to improving relationships with Indigenous nations and understanding their cultures. Across the country, we honor the ancestral and unceded territory of Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people and strive for reconciliation and collaboration. So we've just got a few more folk joining into our call today. An easy way to test if you want to put up your hand either on the screen or you can click up the hand up option. Has anyone been at one of our Alzheimer Society webinars before? You can even nod your head because I can see some of you. It'll be new for some of us then. That's great. We're glad to have you with us. Just some general housekeeping for our talk today. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available on our helpfordementia.ca website. You can find us on social media. We're always have new content for you to learn and grow along with us, so you can give us a follow. And you can check out our Help for Dementia website for upcoming webinars. Just as you're in the call, we'll ask that you keep your microphone muted until we call on you for a question. If you have anything you'd like to share, or you have a question you'd like to ask, and you're welcome to have your camera on or off, whatever's most comfortable for you as we have our conversation today. Um, when you have something you want to say, you can either put up your hand in the Zoom call here under React, or you can type your question into chat if you just like to have it read out. That's more than welcome to. And if you have any questions, we have a fantastic moderator on tonight. Chris is there to help you in the background. So you can always, there's Chris waving away. You can always just reach out to her directly and she'll be able to help you in the background as well. So I'm just going to flip ahead. If you'd like to connect with us on social media, we're on all the platforms you'd expect: Facebook, Instagram, um, X, and LinkedIn, and even TikTok. So we're glad to be with you for this evening. So I'll just close off the screen here because then it's just going to be us having a conversation tonight. Um, So, everyone, we're so glad to have you with us. So, my name is Sarah Rudd. I'm the manager of Palliative Approach and Grief Support Services with the Alzheimer Society of Alberta and the Northwest Territories. And I'm joined tonight by all of you, but also our amazing Marie, our society's mindfulness specialist. So, tonight we're here to talk about grief and mindfulness, two areas that connect deeply to the dementia experience and the work of our team. Our Palliative Approach Grief Support and Mindfulness team was created to make sure that people living with dementia and their care partners have compassionate and practical supports across every stage of the dementia experience. We focus on three key areas. So, a palliative approach, which means planning early and centering care on what matters most to the person. Grief supports before and all throughout one's life and even afterwards, and mindfulness practice that help all of us stay grounded and resilient through change. Our team exists because of a special grant to expand resources as a society, which allowed us to imagine something new. This gave us resources to build programs and train staff and volunteers and create tools that weave palliative planning, grief care, and mindfulness together rather than treating them all as separate services that you'd access through different teams. Our team was able to receive this extended grant offered to persons living with dementia and their care partners, where gaps were identified both by the society and stakeholders just like you. With dollars from the Alberta government, we've been able to expand into other areas as well. So, into rural regions of the province with special mobile rural navigators that are placed right in rural communities and can support people right where they're at. We have support now in cultural communities and three underserved populations across Alberta: the South Asian, Chinese, and Filipino communities. And we have resources to promote dementia supportive communities across public spaces and private businesses to learn more about how they can support persons living with dementia. So if you'd like information about the Society or any of these projects, please reach out anytime and our team will be happy to help you. But for us and our topic tonight, that palliative grief and mindfulness project grew out of what we were hearing from families, that dementia brings ongoing loss long before end of life, and that people need support early from diagnosis on and not just after a person dies. So we've been able to pilot new grief programs, peer support groups, grief counseling, and mindfulness resources and programs. And we'll talk through some of this tonight. But it's also a great time to talk about our amazing Help for Dementia webpage, which is newly updated. So it had links to living well and grief supports. And just I'll beg your patience here. Are you guys able to see the screen with uh, living well with loss and change? Great. I've got Marie nodding, so I'm believing all the rest of you can see it as well. So this is part of our Help for Dementia webpage, but it has resources around grief and loss support, and actually all the way through. I'm just going to scroll right down to the bottom to a brand new tool we've been working on called our Memory Wall, where we remember people who have been part of our community, and we celebrate them and remember them as part of us as through all stages of. There we are. And so we welcome you to visit that resource. I don't know if someone's able to type into chat. It's just helpfordementia.ca and available to you whenever you're interested in going to have a look at that resource. The work that Marie and I get to do is meaningful because our projects don't just fill a gap, it creates a culture where grief planning and living well are part of the conversation right from the beginning of our support. And that's why we're here with you tonight. Not just a chance to share information, it's about connection. So, whether you're a care partner or a person living with dementia, or you're just curious about these topics, we'll hope you leave with some tools or ideas and a sense that you don't have to navigate this alone. My background is in spiritual and psychosocial care. Was working in the community for well over a decade, and then I moved into chaplaincy and continuing care. And I found that work so meaningful because it's about walking alongside people and putting the focus on person centered care, making space for what gives meaning and joy to each person. Spiritual care affirms the value of each person and looks at ability moment by moment. Moving to the Alzheimer Society this year was a gift, as was the ability to work alongside my amazing colleagues, some of which are on the call today, but also Marie. So, Marie, can you introduce yourself briefly here?
Yes, thanks, Sarah, for that great introduction of our team. So my name is Marie Muggeridge, and I am the grief, not the I'm on the team, but I'm the mindfulness specialist here at the Alzheimer Society. And my background's mostly in counseling and art therapy, as well as in somatic experiencing. So working a lot with the body and the nervous system, as well as working with folks with intellectual disabilities. So I come to the society as a new partner in this endeavor.
And in chat, Marie, of course, put in the Help for Dementia page, and Chris Downey, our amazing moderator, put in some resources if at any point you're looking to reach out to the Society. If you're in a moment of crisis or you just have questions, there's lots of ways to get a hold of us there. As we go through our conversation, Marie and I are going to bring up a bunch of topics about pieces that we're working on and we've been looking at it. We thought maybe you would be wondering about, but again, please feel free to ask questions by raising your hand or putting a question in chat, and we'll absolutely be looking forward to how we can chat together about that. Um, yeah, Marie, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. All right, Sarah. So to start our conversation off, I think one of the questions a lot of folks might have is around the phrase good grief. And I'm wondering, what does that even mean, Sarah? Could you share more about it?
Yeah, so I think when people hear good grief, they either, depending on our age, we either think of that clip from Charlie Brown, or you wonder about how grief can be good, right? And so it is a bit of a play on words. Grief is natural and healthy as a response to loss and change. And so often when we think about grief, we think of the heaviness of it. But good grief reminds us that grief can be adaptive, that it helps us to grow. In dementia care, we talk about a palliative approach, which puts the person at the center of their own care and asks what matters most about living and dying well for them. Grief supports us walking alongside the person throughout their transitions, through all stages of life. So we need to find ways to be authentic and adaptive as we're managing grief. Everything around us, our whole life long, will change and grow, and we will too. So having that focus on a palliative approach with grief puts that person back at the center of all the care and the resources and the interventions that are happening around them. So we get to work, Maria and I, alongside care partners and persons living with dementia to provide grief supports in moments of transition and change. We get to offer supports for grief experiences that are validated, compassionate, and holistic. And that embraces anticipatory and ambiguous loss that are part of living with dementia. We share supports through our presence, the incredible team of our dementia navigators, and connections to other community services, all integrated through a care philosophy that prioritizes your quality of living and well being.
Thanks, Sarah. I was just getting lost in all the great information. I really appreciate it. But some of the words that came up, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about them.
Mhm.
Specifically, the what is the difference between like grief, loss, and bereavement? And a lot of folks think that death is the catalyst for grief when maybe it's not actually.
You said something brilliant a ways ago, as Marie often does, that grief can be a trauma response, right? So we experience grief at all sorts of different moments in our life. But you're right, we often think of grief as that experience we have to a death. But grief is actually the response to any loss. For people living with dementia and their care partners, loss unfolds over many stages, just as it would with any serious illness. So it can happen with the diagnosis of illness, but also then changes in memory, independence, and even relationship roles. We call this often anticipatory or dementia grief. And it's that grief over not just the loss that's occurred in the moment, but the losses that might come ahead. So when we're thinking about bereavement loss, that's the loss that occurs after a death. And so bereavement care is about providing space to honor a person's life and adjust to life after caregiving as the care partner. So because of this, our initial program when we started the grief support program with the Alzheimer Society was really thinking about that bereavement grief. But what we came to realize, looking at all the research and talking with our fantastic clients and in the community, is really the ways we needed to support that dementia grief, that ongoing grief that occurs across a person's life that's heightened when you're living with a serious health issue like dementia. And so we were able to offer things like grief counseling throughout the support of our program, peer support groups, rituals of remembrance, sort of seasonally, which support both grief and bereavement in the moment that's needed for the person.
Mhm. Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious. So, how is it best to respond to the question that we often get here at the society, but maybe even to friends and family? Um, how do I get over my grief?
Mhm. I, I think we don't like feeling uncomfortable. None of us do, right? I would rather sit with a nice warm cup of tea than be busy or distracted somewhere else. And so when we encounter grief, our first thought is, "You're right. I should get over this. How do I get through this? How do I get over this?" Um, and when we're supporting people living with dementia and their care partners, it's important for us to help reframe grief not as something we get over, but something that we learn to carry and we live differently with. Grief is ongoing and it changes over time. So there isn't one right way to grieve, but there are practices and supports that can help us. And this can involve being open about needing support or sharing someone's story. It could be about being connected in a relationship or having some self care to take care of yourself as a person. Um, Connection reminds us as people that we're in community, that we're not alone, and that our feelings are valid. So if you already have a large community of support, it's about finding ways to access that or that are meaningful for you. And if not, you always have communities like the Alzheimer Society to reach out to for in those moments for support. This whole model of not sort of finishing grief or like accomplishing grief or moving through grief came out of a model that was developed um, a couple decades ago by Lily Tompkin, a psychologist, about how instead of grief shrinking over time, we grow around it. And some grief models frame grief as a story we walk through that changes us, just like any other story of our life. But most grief models acknowledge that during grief, we go back and forth from the past to the now, and that if we're in anticipatory grief, if we're thinking about ahead, we're bouncing back and forth between the things we're worried about or the things that are heavy on our heart and our normal state. And so because of this, grief supports are about helping us be in the moment, which is one of the reasons we're so excited about the mindfulness program we're able to bring to the society. It's a great tool to help us stay in the present to what matters now rather than being overwhelmed with the past or the future. We also have ways we can support living with grief, things like collective memory activities, like the memory wall I showed you on our Help for Dementia page. That can offer comfort or honor what you've had to put down or what has been lost. Um, there are tools like you can write letters to yourself or to the person that you feel that you were. You can share stories and memories. You can even do activities to help create a legacy, like plant a favorite flower or herb in memory of the person or the piece you've had to put down. Meaning making is a great tool to help transform grief from a feeling of anguish into experience of connection and legacy. If you're ever feeling that your grief is overwhelming, we have resources and supports like our grief counseling service, where we have therapeutic counselors or psychologists who are available to meet with you one on one or in a group setting to provide some therapeutic care to help you manage that grief. And we, of course, have the incredible support groups that you might have seen if you're a client with the Alzheimer Society, where you can meet with people who've had a similar but their own experience and be very open and honest with people who really can hear your story in a different way than many others. Uh, One of the ways I just want to name that when we're thinking about grief, one of the really important things to consider is how we continue to walk while we're managing grief, because the world will continue on around us even when it feels like our world has stopped for a moment. And so, one of the things we encourage is just stopping to do some self care, caring for your body, um, reminding you to sleep, to get good night nutrition, hydration. I encourage everyone to drink one more bottle of water than you think you need in a day. Healthy exercise or spiritual practices, and that could be like a religious practice if that's something that's part of your experience, or just something as simple as going out and being under the sun, embracing some of that warmth, walking in a fall path with the smell of the leaves changing around you. It's about something that helps your body, your heart, and your mind remember you're here in the here and now. All of these activities support resilience, and small acts of self-care, self-soothing can help ease the burden of that grief until, in that Lily Tompkin theory, you sort of grow around it and it's something that's a part of your experience.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm just thinking about that idea of growing around the grief. And
Mhm.
as we know, growing a plant or growing as a small child to an adult, all of those things take a lot of energy and they take a lot of time and care and guidance. And
Mhm.
what I'm hearing you say is that we want to make sure that even though we're having that growth around our grief, that we're taking the time to allow that growth to happen. It's not going to happen overnight, just like growing a tomato plant isn't going to happen overnight either. So I really appreciate that. Another thing I've heard a lot of, and it seems quite common, is I'm grieving even though my loved one is still alive. Is that normal?
100%. Like you say, it's something we hear often from our clients, because that sense of ambiguous grief is often a part of a dementia experience. So that ambiguous grief is when the person that you're with, that you're remembering, is with you physically, but there's a change in the relationship. And so there's a loss even though the person is still here. Acknowledging this feeling and planning for change helps people find meaning even while living with uncertainty. And we're not creatures that are comfortable with uncertainty. And so any serious health condition creates that stress, things that are out of our control. And after a while of being on that roller coaster, it can become easier to focus on all the losses, the downhill parts of the trip, more than the plateaus or even the rises and the successes. And so, feeling that grief or that loss while someone is with us is often part of that experience. So, framing loss as change in those moments and acknowledging the ongoing grief that you're working through and you're living with helps provide a way to consider these feelings and fears, and look at the situation you're in a different way. It allows us to prepare for the challenges that come with living, but also to have gratitude and be in the present for the good moments that are happening along our experience. You talked, Marie, about a plant that's growing or a tomato plant. It can't all be the harvest season, but in the growth we have incredible moments of joy too, right? And so it's just about allowing for all of those moments. Um, and just validating that grief is a part of life and it may be something you're experiencing even as you're supporting a person who is living and well.
Yeah. Sarah, over this past few moments, you've already been talking a lot about the word palliative approach. And when should someone start really thinking about a palliative approach?
And I think that is the shift we're hoping to make is early. So a
Yeah.
palliative approach isn't just for the end of life. It's about focusing on a person's wishes and quality of life at every stage. So all of us should be taking a palliative approach to living well. Research shows that the earlier we begin planning and thinking about this, the better outcomes that we'll have, both for the person living with dementia and their care partners. And the research says it's better result both in terms of quality time, um, managing pain and symptom, and feeling a quality of life with the time we have. So, a palliative approach is for anyone. It's about wrapping supports and care in layers around a person living with a serious illness like dementia. The goal of a palliative approach is to focus on a person's wants and wishes for their own care in their life. So that could include symptom control or community supports, or even pursuing individual passions within resources and abilities. So again, it supports the person with the health condition, but it also supports the care partner because it helps us look at care just not as a transactional tool. I have a health issue. Here's the intervention. We move on. But instead, it helps us look at a whole life of a person living with a condition and all those people surrounding us. So it supports the care partner in ensuring that the person's wishes and needs are being best met through all the stages of their life, especially with someone living with dementia. And so the sooner we think about having a palliative approach to living well, uh, again, the more likely we'll meet the goals we have for ourselves.
Hmm. Lovely. So I heard you mention that there's access to grief counseling through the society. Can you tell me a little bit more about that option?
It's a fantastic resource, and I really hope we've had some fantastic opportunities for clients to be able to come in and access the program. So all clients of the Alzheimer Society can access grief counseling. So that's either the person living with dementia or care partners. So if you are interested in receiving grief counseling, you just call or email into our society line that Chris put in the chat, and we can complete an assessment and match you with the best resources. So our grief counselors are pretty fantastic individuals. They're trained both in grief care and dementia supports, and we know they'll make a difference for you. And so we have, as I said, one-to-one grief counseling, but we're also going to be starting some group grief counseling, and we even have the opportunity in the fall to have people participate in an intervention. EMDR and other kinds of therapeutic supports. And so it's about finding the best tools for you. We use a brief therapy approach. So that means we support you right in the crisis you're working through. So if you're having stress over a diagnosis or a change in your life, or you're just feeling the need to talk to someone about being a care partner to someone with a serious illness, dementia, or you yourself as a person with dementia are trying to um, you just need a space to think through and talk about the changes in your life, an individual would be able to help you.
Great. So the grief counseling means that people can access it at any time. They don't have to wait till the person has bereaved. Is that correct? Or they have passed away. Is that right?
Thank you, Marie, for helping me with that. Exactly, right? So,
Okay.
um, it access at any point along the experience, wherever you feel you need it. And just because you've accessed it once doesn't mean you can't access it again. So, whenever you're
Mhm.
feeling the need for that additional support, we just encourage you to reach out. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Sarah, we
You
have
know,
a question in the chat.
Oh, fantastic! It didn't blink for me there. Thanks for letting us know that, Chris. We've just scrolled down here. Um, Bernice, fantastic. How do we get a care home to start palliative care approach? Our care home isn't able to give any care besides basic physical care. And I think that can be the challenge because our healthcare system is stretched, and it's one of the incredible gifts that the Alzheimer Society has is to connect you to different resources. And so I would encourage you to call in. There are some fantastic societies available throughout Alberta. So there's the Alberta Hospice Society. There are societies like the Pilgrims Hospice Society in and around Edmonton and other areas. And there's the Palliative Care Team. That's part of our Alberta Healthcare Services. And no matter where you live in the province, there's a regional team that's devoted to you who can help you set up a palliative care plan for yourself and access palliative care services. And so I think, Bernice, the really important thing about this question is I think we sometimes feel like we have to invent the wheel on our own. And there are resources we'd love to connect you with on that. Even just at the care home, when you're having the conversations about the kind of care you're looking for, just to emphasize those meanings and values that are most important to your person and yourselves, and and say this is how we're looking to live. How can you support us in that? Do you have anything else? Do you want to jump in with your ask anything more? You're welcome to do that. I think my screen. It's okay. That's all that's in there, Marie. I'm not missing anything. Oh, fantastic. Um,
great. Yeah. So Sarah, this kind of leads me to kind of my next kind of question, which is sometimes people say, I don't feel like I'm living well. How do you respond to that?
I think just like Bernice raised, is that living with a serious health condition um, is not something any of us would choose. This is a hard piece to be living with, but there are many hard things we have lived through in our life. When we talk about living well with dementia, it doesn't mean that every day is will feel good or that there won't be struggles. Living well doesn't erase the hard parts. It's about finding moments of connection and comfort and meaning, even alongside the difficulty. And so I know that a number of our clients are in this boat. They reach out to the Alzheimer's Society often when things are hard and support is needed. So it's okay to acknowledge that this is hard. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean um, that you're that you're not doing a good job of managing your life or your grief. Living well can be as simple as enjoying a favorite song or feeling safe with someone you trust or having space for your emotions. Those small moments matter. And so it could be that in living well, it feels like you get a 5 minute chunk of your day that is your own, the way you'd like to have it, and the rest of the day is hard or okay. Living well isn't a state we achieve just once, it changes from day to day. And some days will be harder than others, and some days will be easier. And that's just a part of the reality of living with dementia. What's important is that you don't have to carry it alone. Here at the Alzheimer's Society, we have supports and resources and people who want to walk alongside you. And I think when we talk about living well with dementia, we're highlighting that it isn't just one thing. Um, it's about you as a person living as well, moment to moment, day to day as you can, as only you can. Your best day may not be my best day. I really do think everyone should have, chocolate and coffee and a cozy chair and a good book. And we'd all have a better world because of that. But your best day may look different than that. And so it's about finding the accommodations so that you can have that best moment. And then we'll move on to the next moment and we meet that challenge as best as we can.
Thank you,
So I
Sarah.
think I think, yeah, Marie, that sense of living well really leads me to the mindfulness program that you're really
Mm.
spearheading for us, though. Um, and so I'm so excited about all the programs you started. How would you explain the phrase mindfulness to someone who hasn't heard it before, who's only heard it from activities or sort of on the news? How would you talk about mindfulness to all of us?
Yeah. So mindfulness definitely can get a feeling of, oh, that sounds way too hard, or that sounds like it's easy and it's not going to help. So it at the core of mindfulness, though, the idea is being present. And that being present can be a very, very challenging task, especially when we're very busy and struggling to keep up with everything on our plate. In mindfulness practices, you can make some time to connect with your own present moment, a lot of like what you were saying earlier. And sometimes it's easier to be present when something is new or out of the usual or out of the normal. So mindfulness can feel like a really, really big task. And it's really not about turning your mind off and having blank screen in your mind. But it's really more about giving yourself a little bit of a break from the stress. Even taking a 10-second break to find something that is more neutral or positive in your body or to look at, or like you mentioned, listening to music, that can be really helpful for your body to just relax for just 10 seconds. That helps us to keep that growing going and things to feel like they're not as hard as they were 10 seconds ago. Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about our society is we have things like the support groups, and it you see people coming in and they share hard stories and good moments, but we gather together and we have that moment of connectedness. You see people take a breath and you see a different sense of being able to settle into their story and their being. And so I love that, Marie. I love that we can do that on our own or in community. So what are some of those ways that you might recommend, or you might help have us think about how we could try mindfulness? You recommended some small activities, but what if someone doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, it is a challenge to start some new things, especially something as new as mindfulness, perhaps to some of us on the call. And the idea is that you can practice anywhere and anytime, and figuring out what you like in mindfulness and what works for you is very similar to the idea of how do you take your coffee. Not everybody takes coffee the same way. And so it's the same thing for mindfulness. We each kind of need to sort out what is the taste for us, what fits for us, and what we like. So there's a few ideas that I'll just put out here. But again, if you have more questions about more specifics, you can always reach out to the society. But for example, something like counting items. Now that seems again very simple, but when was the last time you looked around your space and or car or room or house and looked for everything that was pink? I don't know. Maybe you have 5 things that are pink, or maybe you have 14 things that are pink. But knowing those items are there can be a good way. And you can choose a different color if you want green and count all of your plants. But that's a really simple way to be back in this present moment because your eye starts to look for those things and it starts to feel like you know where you are and that this moment is a little bit more safe than I first thought it was. Another really great tool is our lungs and our breathing, our nose, our mouth, all of our airway system is a great thing that is always working. And it's working faster when I'm talking faster, but it's always working. And you can just give yourself a chance to feel your breath and feel that rise and fall of your chest, or maybe hear the breathing through your nose, or even having a chance to really long-term mindfulness, you can start to feel the sense of your nostrils getting warm and cool. Now that is a expert level, but it is something to kind of start to think about how your body is changing. Cool air goes in, warm air comes out because it gets all warmed by your body. So again, on helpfordementia.ca, there's lots of different resources. There's lots of different more guided meditations that might help you to notice parts of your body or parts of your space that help you to feel more safe. And that's why that's usually the best place to start for someone who's beginning. Um, and they all have their own flavor. Some people enjoy certain voices that are there. Some people enjoy certain sounds. Again, they might enjoy the connection to the lungs, or maybe it's more connection to the body and doing a little bit of movement with the mindfulness. But there's lots of different options, and there's one that's up on the website, helpfordementia.ca, that's provided by Vimeo, and that one has about I think there's about 12 or 15 different guided meditations that are really easy to access, and you can try them. There's some of them are 3 minutes, some of them are 10 minutes. And so there's hopefully something that fits just right for you to try and at the beginner level.
That's exactly what I was wondering. I always am a person who has to work on my sense of patience, right? And so that sense of those breathing exercises, for some that would come very naturally, and for some people that wouldn't feel as comfortable, right? So, are there other kinds of mindfulness practices that maybe people wouldn't be thinking of that they could try if they're not if they need a little bit more activity?
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard to connect to the breath, or sometimes breathing just isn't enough. It doesn't feel like enough connection to something new to really get us out of that stress and into the present moment. And so one of the ways is to think about your body and its touch points. And so for me, my sits bones are right on my chair and my back is leaning on the backrest. And I can feel that my feet are firmly planted on the ground. And so those touch points of my body can be spaces that I connect to. And I can notice, oh, are my feet warm or cold? Are my sits bones warm or cold? Do I need to adjust my chair? Yeah, I do, because I noticed that I was a little crinkled there. So getting a chance to do that, and then thinking about moving our feet and moving our hands and sort of doing just little simple like rocking with our feet or our hands, maybe wiggling our toes. Those can help us be connected to the here and now again. And so again, some of those guided meditation and mindfulness practices can be really helpful. And hopefully over time, there's an opportunity for you to connect to them on your own without the guide, but knowing that the guides are always there for you.
I,
Yeah.
I it's one of the things that I love is, Marie, you've gathered some resources that people can have, just sort of practical tools, um, and those are great to help us build some skills, some resources, some tools for mindfulness as a discipline or a habit. But are there ways, or can you recommend some tools that might be helpful if we're in a more stressful situation, or we want to look at this sort of with more structure? I know there's some you use some of your programs.
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. So you're right. It's natural to think, oh, I can do mindfulness at home in my bedroom or in my living room, and it's super quiet and peaceful. But what if I'm in a more stressful environment, or what if I get a really stressful phone call and I need to sort of regulate or find somewhere to be a bit more present again because I still have to go on with my day. And so this one is a simple one. And it has a great name because it's called TIP. Like, here's a tip for mindfulness. But it actually stands for T stands for temperature. The I stands for intense movement. The first P, so there's two P's. The first P is paced breathing, and the last P is progressive relaxation. So all of those words together are options for you to access more mindfulness. So if we start again at the beginning with T for temperature, this is something that you might do for your body. So you might decide to bring a hot cup of tea and notice your hands feeling really warm in that cup of tea. Or maybe it's drinking some really icy water. Or when it's winter, maybe just opening the window to feel the fresh, cold air on your face for a few seconds. When your body gets this reaction of like, whoa, what's going on? What am I noticing? That temperature change can help us remember that we're in the here and now. We're in this present moment. I do have the door open and I am feeling the cold air on my face. The next one is intense movement. And so this is when you want to use those bigger muscles. So if you have a possibility to use your thighs or even your biceps, these options are really good because you want to get your body moving, get your blood flowing into those areas. And then your heart rate will go up a little bit, but it'll again remind your nervous system and your body that you're in the here and now. So if you're able, you can do a jog on the spot if that's good for you, or some jumping jacks if that's also an option. But giving yourself that intense movement is another option and tip. You don't have to do all of them. But again, just like the cup of coffee, everyone might have a different option, interest or one that works for them or that's their taste. The next one is paced breathing. So this one there's lots of different ways to do this. One of my favorite ways to do it though is called box breathing. And box breathing is when you breathe in for 4 and you hold for 4 and then you breathe out for 4 counts. And what's nice is that you can actually use your hand as a box. So you can breathe in, hold for 4, breathe out, hold for 4, and go back down. And so this paced breathing in a box is a really good option. Again, there's many options out there on the Help for Dementia website that I'll put up, and you can find the one that fits for you. And the very last one is progressive relaxation. And there are some really good videos on this as well. And they help you to guide through your body and it helps you to start usually at your toes or feet and you kind of give them a bit of clenching or you engage the muscle for a few seconds and then you release it and then you do it again for your calves and then you release it and you go all the way up your body and again your body is getting a chance to remember that it's in the here and now by engaging those muscles and saying it's okay, it's safe to be in this place right now. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And Marie, you said you were going to put it in the chat, but fantastic. Chris has already put them there. The link to the mindfulness page and just the tips process for that. So one of the other things that we're doing at the Alzheimer Society is you are running some fantastic mindfulness programs to help build mindfulness as like a discipline or skill, and you're using art to do that. Do you have any other recommendations for ways that people can start just thinking of mindfulness as something you have that you practice so you can pull back on in those times of need?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And the the main idea there is just to have a chance to practice them in a setting like the skills group where you get to practice them with me, you get to ask me questions, and you get to hear the answers for others as well. So while it's not a support group, it's also an opportunity just to get some different ideas going. So there's different opportunities to connect with all of your senses. And so, like we did a lot with the body in the tip one, there's other ways to think about your hearing or your taste or more of your movement. And so that is where art making can come into play, or again, doing some more nature walks, things like that, that can really help to build that in. In the skills course, too, we talk a little bit more about how to do this on a regular day, every day. And so we try to look at linking it to something that we're already doing. So I'm hoping most of us brush our teeth in the morning. And so that might be a time where you could start to link in a chance to be mindful. Maybe you can start to notice, oh, am I really brushing up and down like my dentist tells me? Or am I just randomly brushing, right? Maybe I can notice the color of the toothpaste that comes out. Some of them are kind of interesting colors. Or maybe you start to notice that smell of the mint that comes out of your toothpaste as well. So there's lots of different really natural moments in your day that you can then add mindfulness to it. And so that's really what the skills course is for. And if you haven't signed up, you're welcome to sign up or look for the next offering on the Help for Dementia website, or connect with a navigator to learn more about those programs.
A fantastic thing that we got to do earlier this year was build a sensory garden. Our team went out to a greenhouse and invited clients to come along, anyone who wanted, and build a sensory garden. And I loved it because it was one of those sort of mountaintop experiences, right? Like it was separate from everything else. We went and we put all the herbs or plants together, but then it came home, and every day then was the responsibility for watering it and going out and smelling the plant and rubbing your fingers on the leaves and getting that sense again. And then even as the fall came and all of the leaves got brittle and dry, it was a remembrance of all of those moments of growing it together, cleaning out the bowl and preparing it again for spring. And so um, I think that's the piece that connects these resiliency sort of supports and mindfulness as we think about how we live our best life. And no life will be perfect. And so living well is just encompasses all of these pieces. So um, we're so grateful to be able to offer so many of these things. I'm so grateful for Marie and for the incredible team we have, and for the clients who we get to know, who teach us pieces every day about this experience that you have. And so we just wanted to make space if anyone had a question or just had a piece that brought them to this conversation about grief or mindfulness you were looking to share. We'd love to hear from you as well.
Sarah, there's a question in the chat.
Of course there is. Fantastic. I can't see it. The
Oh,
last thing I
That,
see is,
I
oh,
can
that's
see it,
okay.
Sarah.
Yeah.
okay, please.
Yeah. So there's a question here from Stephanie. It says, is there a best time of day to do a mindfulness activity? How can I start to add this to my daily routine without feeling overwhelmed with another task? Yeah, that's a really good question, Stephanie, because the last thing that I'm suggesting is for you to add more to your to-do list. But instead, it's really about finding what is something that you're already doing, like my toothpaste example. What is something that you're already doing that might have an opportunity to just be more attentive to or be more present to as you do it? Perhaps it is even when you're putting on your socks or your shoes for the day. Maybe you notice that, oh, this is actually a really cozy sock. I really like this. That might be just a moment of mindfulness as well. Um, a lot of folks really identify with connecting with nature. So that is a really nice place to start. So if you're not sure where to start, maybe just taking a moment to connect with nature by looking out a window, or even looking at your plants, like Sarah was saying. Or if you're able and willing to go outside for a little bit of a walk, you'll never know which blue jay you're going to see, or what kind of other types of animals or things you might hear or see. And so being more mindful just by being more present to our day-to-day life can be helpful. Yeah. Oh, good. Morning cup of coffee all ready for for the next morning. Great, Stephanie. I can't wait to hear more, or if you'd like to come to our skills group, that would be great as well.
I think that example of a morning cup of coffee is so perfect because, again, it's easy in some ways to talk about mindfulness on an evening session when we're all together and you're on the call. It can be hard to figure out when you're in that moment of loss or change, how to weave this in. And so it's about finding those patterns that Marie said are already part of our life and just giving ourselves a moment of solace, recognizing that it's okay that you're having a hard moment, that is very human, and that's a very honest and healthy reaction to a hard situation. And then finding, like Marie said, those moments of care for yourself, so that you can come back to the present, and then with your best judgment, decide how you'll approach the situation that you're in. So it's a great example. I'm always for a warm cup, something delicious in the morning. Just want to make space. Oh, Marie, yeah.
No, I was just going to say if there's other questions, or we're happy to answer them.
You've probably picked up that Marie and I are very excited about the Help for Dementia website. So we really do encourage you to go there when you have a second, though. But Chris, I think you popped up a question that might have come through in chat. What advice do we have for care partners or caregivers who feel isolated or misunderstood in their grief? And I think what a what a great question, because um, when we talk about persons living with dementia, we always say that if you've met one person living with dementia, you've met one person living with dementia, right? You've met one care partner who's had an experience. That each of our stories and our journeys will be unique to us. And so just knowing that sometimes um, that our story is unique is a way to shape and understand our own narrative, but to come to places where you might feel a commonality, to hear from other people who've had a lived experience that may have some common connection points, might be helpful, but also to acknowledge those things that connect us. So change is common, and loss and gifting and gratitude is common in everyone's life story. And so those moments when we feel very alone, it can help us remember those other moments of change and transition we've had in our life, and how you've managed to deal with that to get to this point today. What resources and supports have been important to you, and how can you draw on those in those hard moments? Again, you can always reach out to us, but there might be something that's been an incredibly powerful tool for you in the past, like Marie says, being in nature, being present in your own experiences or stories. And so just remembering that you are your best author of your own fate, and that there are people who've had similar experiences, and there are resources that you know at this stage in your life are meaningful to you, and we can help you access those. um, that sense of ambiguous and anticipatory grief, I think, can feel very isolating. There's something called disenfranchised grief as well, where it feels like grief that other people don't acknowledge. And those pieces could all make us feel very isolated. And so just remembering that those can be common parts of being a care partner or a person living with dementia, I think can help validate that feeling in yourself, and open up the conversation so you can begin to share some of your stories.
I see some
Marie, do
more
you have anything? Oh,
questions.
oh yeah, go ahead.
If it's okay, we'll try to answer a couple more questions.
Oh yeah.
So the first question is, do you have any tips for a person living with dementia who's in care to do some of the mindfulness activities? And so it is possible to bring some more presence and here and now, for a person living with dementia as well. And so, some ideas that I just jotted down as Sarah was sharing was bringing in some of those novel experiences. So, maybe if possible, bringing in like a scented lotion, if possible. Again, depends on this place that your person is living, if they're allowed scents. But even just helping them to rub it on their hands, even if it's unscented, but that experience of really feeling the different and the softness of the lotion being added. listening to their favorite song. So bringing that music piece back to the present moment with them. Maybe asking some questions about what do they like about this song, or even just sitting there in peace and just being present to the lyrics and the beat together. You might consider using some of those sort of warming bags for your shoulders, just giving them a new sense of the temperature change. So warming that in their microwave and then putting that on their lap or on their hands. That new sense of heat might also help them to be more in the present moment, as well as some art making opportunities as well. So maybe that's just bringing in some crayons and paper and just having some interesting time and just noticing what's going on the paper. I really, if someone's really into them, I think coloring books are a good option. However, I'm really open to a blank page as well. And you again can be the author or artist of that work. There's another question here from Donna about programs for people living with dementia to practice mindfulness. Yes, we do have a program for specific to Edmonton at this time, and it's an opportunity for a care partner and person with with dementia, or just the person living with dementia, to come to a mindfulness program where we engage with each other, as well as some of the meditations and mindfulness practices, and including in some art. And so, especially in any of them that are to do with art, you do not have to be an artist and you do not have to know how to draw anything in particular. If you're willing and interested, that's enough. And if you can be curious about it, then that's really all that matters at this time for engagement. Thanks
Marie
for those
has a
questions.
fantastic tool from a few years ago called a Buddha board that is just a board with a paintbrush. You can paint with water as well. And I love that one both from working in a care home because you can be creative and the colors and stuff on the page don't have to overwhelm a person, right? So I think there's so many ways to practice it. There was another question that came in about how do we introduce mindfulness at different times of the day for person living with dementia. And Marie sort of answered a version of that. But I think one of the things Marie says that I love so often is there's no perfect way to do it. And there's no one way that is right for everybody. And so finding ways that are meaningful for you and the person you support are incredibly valuable. Um, Chris, I think we're coming to the end of our time, though. Is that right?
We are. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Sarah and Marie. I've learned so much from this, and I'm sure everyone has. And for anyone who wants to rewatch this, we'll have this up on our Help for Dementia site, the recording of this next week. So you'll be able to watch it or share it with a friend then. But thanks everyone so much for joining us this evening.
Wonderful. And Chris will be back next month for another fantastic conversation um, that they
We
can
will,
register for.
yeah, we'll be back for some psychological safety webinars, and then after that, some emotional intelligence webinars. So yeah, please take a look at our site for more information and if you want to sign up. Hope everyone has a good night.
Thanks. Wonderful to have you all here. Be lovely to have you.